There is a specific kind of love that hides in friendship. Not because it is ashamed, not because it is small, but because friendship is the container it finds first, the warm, familiar, daily container of someone who knows you completely and chooses to be near you consistently, and once it has settled into that container, it becomes very difficult to see it for what it is. You stop seeing it because it is everywhere. It is in the Thursday night phone calls that go 2 hours, in the way he notices when something is wrong before you have said anything, in the way the room is better when he is in it and quieter when he is not, and you have never once examined why. It is in the 5 years of calling someone your best friend when what you were actually doing was loving them in the most complete way available to you and not having the vocabulary for the whole of it. I had that love for 5 years. And the morning after the sleepover was the morning I stopped being able to call it by the wrong name. My name is Aaron. I was 26 years old. And my best friend's name was Noah Park. This is the story of 5 years of friendship and one morning that showed me what the 5 years had actually been. Noah Park came into my life at the beginning of my junior year at the University of Illinois at Chicago. We were in the same section of an urban planning course that neither of us had chosen deliberately. It was a distribution requirement, the kind that students resent until they discover that the resentment was misplaced. The professor was exceptional. The course turned out to matter. And Noah was sitting 2 rows in front of me. I noticed him in the way that you notice people who are paying genuine attention in a lecture hall where most people are performing attention. He was not taking notes. He was listening with the specific forward quality of someone who was absorbing rather than recording. Occasionally he said something, answering a question or raising one, and the something was always more interesting than the something you expected. After class on the third week, he turned around and looked at me. "You said something good in there," he said, "about displacement." "You didn't say anything about displacement," I said. "I know," he said, "I was thinking it, you said it better." "Aaron," I said. "Noah," he said. We got coffee. 2 hours later we were still in the coffee shop, and the displacement in the lecture had become housing policy and urban economics and the specific ways that cities communicated their values through what they built and what they destroyed. We walked back to campus in the October evening. "Same time Thursday," he said. "The lecture," I said. "No," he said, "the coffee." It was not a question, it was a statement. The specific confidence of someone who had determined that this was happening and was informing rather than requesting. Thursday came. Then the Thursday after. Then every Thursday. Then other days. By December he was the person I talked to every day, not because of any formal arrangement, because the days when I did not talk to him had a quality to them that the days when I did talk to him did not have, a specific deficit. The sense of something missing that I noticed and did not examine. He was 24, 2 years ahead of me. He had done a gap year between high school and college, traveling through South Korea where his father's family had roots, learning the language he had heard at home but never formally studied. The gap year had given him the specific quality of someone who had done something outside the expected sequence, and found that the outside of the expected sequence was where the interesting things happened. He was Korean American. His parents were first generation. His father had come from Seoul, his mother from Daegu. They had met at the University of Illinois and had stayed and built the specific life of people who chose a place rather than being born into it. He carried both of them in his face and neither of them exclusively. He was also the person who, 2 months into the Thursday coffees, told me he was gay with the specific matter-of-fact quality of someone for whom the information was important but not complicated by self-judgment. He said it the way he said most things, directly, as information, without performance. I told him I was gay too. He looked at me. "I know," he said. "How?" I said. "Because you talk about Aidan Gallagher from your economics study group the way people talk about people they're attracted to," he said. "I don't," I started. "You described his handwriting in detail," he said, "in a conversation about economic theory." I looked at my coffee. "Right," I said. He smiled. "Relax," he said, "I'm not your threat, I'm your friend." Your friend. 5 years later I would understand what was underneath those two words. Not then, not for 5 years. The friendship was real. I want to be clear about this, it was not a consolation prize, it was not a lesser version of what it could have been. It was, for 5 years, one of the most significant and sustaining relationships of my life. We graduated, him first, me 2 years later, and we both ended up in Chicago, which was either coincidence or the specific logic of two people who had built something in a city and were not yet finished building. He went to a policy think tank in the Loop. I went to a graduate program in urban planning at UIC. We lived in different neighborhoods, he in Logan Square, me in Pilsen, but the distance was negligible against the established frequency of our contact. Thursday coffees became Thursday dinners, mostly at his apartment where he cooked with the same focused intention he brought to policy analysis. Both of us on the couch with the television as background to conversations that had nothing to do with what was on the television. The phone calls that went 2 hours because neither of us said anything that indicated the conversation should end. I watched him through 3 relationships. The first was with a man named David, a grad student at Northwestern, who lasted 8 months and ended with the specific quiet that relationships end with when both people have been good to each other and have grown in incompatible directions. Noah was sad about David for 2 months and then was not sad about him, and moved on with the specific clean efficiency of someone who processed and concluded rather than lingered. The second was with a man named Tom, who lasted 4 months and ended because Tom had taken a position in London and the distance had not seemed worth managing. The third was with a man named James, who lasted 14 months and ended badly enough that Noah had called me from a parking lot at 11 on a Tuesday night, and I had driven to Logan Square and sat with him in his apartment until 2 in the morning. I watched all 3 of these and I felt things about all 3 that I filed under friendship is complicated territory and moved on. I had 2 relationships of my own. Both of them were real, both of them ended. One ended because of distance, one because of incompatibility that neither of us had wanted to acknowledge for the months it would have been honest to acknowledge it. After the second one ended, Noah had said, "You deserve someone who sees you completely." "What does that mean?" I said. "Someone who pays the kind of attention to you that you pay to things you care about," he said. "Someone who is actually looking." I had thought about that for a long time. I had not thought about who he might have been describing. Not for another year. Not until the November sleepover. November in Chicago. The specific quality of a Chicago November evening, the cold that has arrived and settled and is now simply the condition of the world. The kind of cold that makes interior spaces feel like shelters rather than just buildings. The kind that makes the quality of who you are inside a warm room matter more than usual because outside the room is winter, and inside the room is the specific warmth of a place where someone you trust is present. The sleepover was not planned. He had come over on a Friday evening. We had dinner I cooked, which happened approximately 1 Friday a month, the rotation that had established itself over years. We watched something on television. We talked. At 11:30 he looked at his phone. "There's a weather advisory," he said, "ice on the roads." "Stay," I said, "you can take the couch." "The couch," he said. "It's a good couch," I said. "I know it's a good couch," he said, "I helped you move it." "So stay," I said. He stayed. I gave him a blanket and a pillow and he settled on the couch with the comfortable ease of someone who had been in this apartment enough times that its spaces were familiar to him. I went to my room. I could not sleep. This was not unusual. I had irregular sleep, but the specific quality of the not sleeping was different. Not anxiety, not the restless energy of a mind that would not quiet, something else. The awareness of him in the other room. The specific quality of the apartment with him in it versus the apartment without him in it. I had lived alone for 2 years. I knew the sound of the apartment alone, the settling of the building, the refrigerator, the specific silence that a space has when it is occupied only by you. The apartment with Noah in it was different. Not louder, more present. I lay in the dark and I thought about this for a long time. And then I thought about something he had said 3 months earlier at the end of the James relationship when I had driven to Logan Square and sat with him until 2 in the morning. He had said at some point in the evening, "I keep choosing people who are the right answer on paper." "What's the wrong answer on paper?" I said. He had looked at me. For a moment that was longer than the conversation required. And then he had said, "Someone who's already in my life." I had filed that under things Noah says that are probably about his relationship pattern. Lying in my bed in November with him on my couch in the other room, I took it out of the file. And I looked at it directly. I did not sleep. At 3 in the morning, I got up for water. The living room was dark except for the streetlight coming through the window. Noah was on the couch with the blanket pulled around him facing the window. He was awake. I knew he was awake because I knew the quality of his sleeping versus his waking. 5 years had taught me this without my having noted it. "You're awake," I said. "So are you," he said. I sat in the chair across from the couch. The chair that was where I sat when we watched television, and he had the couch, our established positions. "What are you thinking about?" I said. He was quiet for a moment. "You," he said. I held this. "What about me?" I said. He sat up, the blanket around his shoulders, the streetlight on his face. "Aaron," he said. "Yeah. I need to tell you something," he said. "And I need you to know that I have been not telling you for a long time, and that not telling you has cost more than I estimated." I held the water glass. "How long?" I said. "Since the 2nd year," he said. "Since you came back from winter break and you had cut your hair and you walked into the Thursday coffee, and I thought," he stopped. "What did you think?" I said. "That I was in serious trouble," he said. I held the water glass. "No," I said. "Let me finish," he said. "I have been your friend, completely and genuinely your friend. Everything we have been to each other is real. I am not revising 5 years into something it wasn't. It was friendship. It was also," he stopped. "Also what?" I said. "The most sustained thing I have ever felt for anyone," he said. "In 5 years, through 3 relationships that were the right answer on paper, through your 2 relationships, through every Thursday and every phone call and every time you said something in a conversation that was exactly the thing I had been thinking." He held the blanket. "I told you I was in serious trouble. I was right. I never found my way out of it." The apartment, the 3 in the morning, the streetlight. "Why didn't you say anything?" I said. "Because you were my best friend," he said. "And I have watched what happens when the thing that is said cannot be unsaid. I have watched relationships end and take the friendship with them, and the friendship," he stopped. "The friendship was the thing I could not afford to lose." I held this. "No," I said. "Yeah. I have been filing something," I said, "for about the same amount of time." He held very still. "Under what?" he said. "Under friendship is complicated territory," I said. "Under he doesn't mean it that way. Under you are going to ruin the best thing in your life if you are not careful." He held his still. "And now," he said. "And now it is 3 in the morning," I said, "and you are on my couch and you just told me and I cannot go back to the file." He looked at me. "Aaron," he said. "Yeah." "What was in the file?" he said, specifically. I put the water glass down. I looked at him across the dark room. "That I have been in love with you," I said, "since approximately the 2nd year, since you told me I deserved someone who sees me completely, and I thought, you see me completely. You are the person who sees me, and I couldn't say that." He was very still. Then he said, "I told you that." "Yes," I said, "I think you were talking about yourself." "I was talking about myself," he said. It was the closest I could come to saying it directly. I held his gaze. The streetlight, the November apartment, the couch and the chair where we had always been, positioned across from each other, looking at each other, for 5 years of calling it something it was not fully named by. We did not say anything for a long time after that, just sat in the dark with the streetlight and the winter outside and what had been said between us. 5 years of filing, both of us, the same filing system, the same material in both files, both of us managing the same thing from different sides of the same couch. At some point he said, "What do we do?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "That's the most honest thing either of us has said in 5 years." And I laughed, and he laughed. And the laughter was the specific kind that arrives when something that has been held too long is finally released. Not the laughter of nothing being serious. The laughter of something being too serious for anything but laughter to hold. We were still laughing when the morning started coming through the window. Blue at first, then gray, then the specific quality of a Chicago November morning that is not pretty but is real. And I thought, the friendship is not ruined, it is not lesser, it is larger. It became what it was supposed to be, at 3 in the morning in November, in the most ordinary circumstances, on the couch and in the chair where we had always been. The morning came in the way Chicago mornings come in November, gray and certain, not dramatic. The specific matter-of-fact quality of a morning that is happening regardless of what you feel about it. We had talked until 4:30. Not about the filing system, not exclusively. about what came next, about the specific complicated territory of two people who have a 5-year friendship and have just told each other something that changes the container of that friendship without changing what the friendship was made of. He made coffee at 6:30. Because he could not sleep and the kitchen was familiar and making coffee was something his hands knew how to do when his mind was somewhere else. I heard the coffee maker and came out of my room. He was at the stove, not just the coffee, he was making eggs. The specific eggs of someone who had learned in this kitchen on the mornings he had spent here before the planned overnights and the unplanned ones. He knew where things were. He moved through my kitchen with the comfortable efficiency of someone at home. I stood in the doorway. He looked at me. "Sit," he said. I sat. He made breakfast with the focused attention he brought to things he cared about. Eggs the way I liked them, I had not told him in any single conversation. He had noticed over 5 years of breakfasts that were occasionally shared. He set the plate in front of me. He sat across from me. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I said. We looked at each other in the morning light. "Are you okay?" he said. "Yes," I said. "Are you?" "I'm terrified," he said. "Why?" I said. "Because this morning is different from every other morning," he said, "and I don't know what the different means yet." "What do you want it to mean?" I said. He held his coffee cup. "I want it to mean," he said, "that we stop calling it the wrong name, that we stop managing it, that he stopped, that we find out what it actually is." "We know what it is," I said. "We know what the feeling is," he said. "We don't know what it looks like as the thing itself rather than as the thing contained in the friendship." I looked at him. "Scared?" I said. "Yes," he said. "Me too," I said. He held his cup. "Aaron," he said. "Yeah." "What if it doesn't work?" he said. "The non-friendship version, what if we are better as the friendship?" "We don't know that it won't work," I said. "We don't know that it will," he said. I looked at him across the kitchen table. "No," I said. "Yeah." "In 5 years," I said, "has our friendship ever not worked?" He held my gaze. "No," he said. "Every time it has been tested," I said, "by distance or by your relationships or by mine or by the specific difficulties that 5 years of close friendship produces, has it broken?" "No," he said. "Then what makes you think the thing we've been calling friendship is going to break the moment we call it by its real name?" I said. He held my gaze. "Because the stakes are higher," he said. "The stakes have always been this high," I said. "You have always been this important. I have always had this much to lose. The only thing that's changed is that we both know it." He was quiet. "That's a good argument," he said. "Thank you," I said. "I've been thinking about it since 3 in the morning." He almost smiled. "Aaron," he said. "Yeah." "I want to take you on a date," he said. I held my coffee. "A date?" I said. "A real one," he said. "Not a Thursday dinner, not a thing that looks like a date but that we can call friendship if we're not ready. An actual date, where both of us know what it is." I looked at him. "Okay," I said. "Yeah," he said. "Yes," I said. "When?" "Saturday," he said. "That's tomorrow," I said. "Yes," he said. "You're not wasting time," I said. "I've been waiting 5 years," he said. "I'm done wasting time." I held my coffee cup. I felt something in my chest that was the specific quality of something released after being held too long. "Okay," I said. "Saturday." "Saturday," he said. He went back to his eggs. I went back to mine. The specific quality of a morning that had changed everything, and was now containing the change in the most ordinary way available: breakfast at a kitchen table with coffee and eggs and the gray November light, and the person who had been the most important person in your life for 5 years, and was now something more than you had been calling him. The Friday between the morning and the Saturday was the longest day I had experienced since waiting for graduate school admissions decisions. Not because of anxiety exactly. The specific quality of anticipation of someone who has been waiting for something without knowing they were waiting for it and has now been told it is coming and must simply wait the remaining hours. I called my best friend Priya. Priya had been my second closest friend since college. She had known about Noah since approximately year 2, not about the filing system, about the specific quality of how I talked about him. You finally told him, she said, when I had explained the basics of the 3 in the morning. We both told each other, I said. You both knew, she said. Yes, I said. I know, she said. How long have you known, I said. Since you called me after you helped him move his couch and you spent 20 minutes telling me about how he organizes his bookshelves, she said. That was year 3. I was describing his apartment, I said. You were describing him, she said, the way you do when someone matters. I held the phone. I do that, I said. You describe things you love with detail, she said. You always have, the way you describe Chicago in October, the way you describe the specific policy paper you read that changed how you thought about urban housing, the way you describe Noah Park. She paused, all the same quality of attention. I held this. Priya, I said. Yeah. Why didn't you say anything, I said. Because it wasn't mine to say, she said, because you needed to get there on your own because the filing system was yours to dissolve. She paused. Also because I tried to hint at it in year 3 and you completely missed the hint. What was the hint, I said. I said, Aaron, you talk about Noah like he hangs the moon, she said. And I said. You said he's a really good friend, she said. I held the phone. I was really committed to the file, I said. You were, she said. You're not anymore, so what are you going to do? We have a date tomorrow, I said. A real one, she said. A real one, I said. He said he's done waiting. Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, he's been waiting 5 years, the man has patience. He does, I said. Go on the date, Aaron, she said. And do not overthink it, you already know everything about him, you already love him, the only new thing is the name you're calling it. I held the phone. That's actually very simple, I said. It is, she said, that's why it took you 5 years. He took me to the restaurant in River North that he had mentioned once 9 months earlier in the context of a conversation about a policy event he had attended there. He had said, the food was extraordinary, I had filed it. He had not filed it, he had remembered it, he had made a reservation. This was characteristic. He paid attention to things I said and remembered them and acted on them weeks or months later without announcement, as a natural consequence of having actually listened. I had noticed this for 5 years as a quality of his friendship. Seeing it applied in this context was different. Not because he was different, because I was looking directly at it rather than through the friendship filter. We were shown to the table. We sat across from each other. He looked at me. I looked at him. Hi, he said. You said that this morning, I said. It was a good opening then, he said, it still is. Hi, I said. Something shifted in the room. Not the room, in the quality of the space between us, the specific shift that occurs when a context changes and the change becomes real. We had sat across from each other hundreds of times, at my kitchen table, at his kitchen table, at the Thursday coffee shop, at the restaurants that had been part of 5 years of dinners. Same positions, same faces, completely different tonight. You're nervous, he said. Are you, I said. Yes, he said, but I'm the kind of nervous that is also, he stopped. What, I said. Excited, he said, the kind of nervous that is not afraid of the situation but is aware of its significance. It is significant, I said. Yes, he said, 5 years is a significant prequel. Have you ever dated someone you were already this close to, I said. No, he said, you. No, I said. We held this together. What's different, he said. What do you mean, I said. What's different about this evening from a Thursday dinner, he said, objectively, what is actually different? I thought about it. I know what it is, I said. What, he said. I'm not managing anything, I said. For the first time in 5 years in a social context with you, I am not managing anything. He held my gaze. Neither am I, he said. The restaurant, the River North evening, the menu between us that neither of us was looking at. No, I said. Yeah. Tell me something you've never told me, I said. He looked at me. In 5 years, he said, I have kept a list. Of what, I said. Of the moments, he said, the specific moments where what I felt was, he stopped, where the feeling was too large for the friendship container. I held this. Like what, I said. He held his water glass. "The evening you defended your thesis proposal," he said. "You called me after you were exhausted, you had been up for 20 hours, you said, 'I think it went well,' in the most understated voice. And I knew from your voice that it had not just gone well, that it had gone exactly right, and I wanted," he stopped. "What did you want?" I said. "To be in the room," he said, "to have been there for the thing that mattered most to you professionally." He paused. "I wanted to be the person who was in the room when the important things happened." I looked at him. "You were in my room at 2 in the morning the night before," I said. "We went through the whole presentation together." "I know," he said. "I wanted to be there for the thing itself, not just the preparation." I held this. "I wanted to call you when it was done," I said. "You were the first person I called." "I know," he said. "Not because you were my best friend," I said, "because you were the person you wanted to tell," he said. "Yes," I said. He held his water glass. "Add that to the list," he said. I looked at him. "What else is on the list?" I said. He smiled. "That would take more than one dinner," he said. "Good thing we have more than one dinner," I said. He looked at me. The smile again, complete, the one I had been cataloging for 5 years as the thing that made a room better and had never let myself understand why. "Good thing," he said. We stayed at that restaurant for 3 hours. We talked the way we always talked, with the specific ease of two people who had been building a conversation for 5 years and had not yet found its bottom. But differently, without the filter, without the file. Everything I said landed in a different way because I was not managing how it would be received. And everything he said landed in a different way because I was not processing it through the friendship lens. I was processing it through the thing it actually was, which was everything. Every conversation we had ever had, every Thursday and every phone call and every 2 hours on a couch watching something neither of us was paying attention to, it was all the same thing. It had always been the same thing. And the name I was putting on it now was not different from the feeling I had carried for 5 years. It was just accurate, for the first time, the right name for the right thing, and I thought, what took me so long? And then I thought it took exactly as long as it needed to take. The filing system was not a waste. It was the container that kept the thing safe while we were both becoming the people who could hold it without the container. December in Chicago was committed. Not the tentative cold of November. The committed cold of a city that had decided winter was not a phase but a permanent condition and was now living in it fully. The specific quality of a Chicago December that anyone who has lived there knows: the lake wind, the particular brightness of the cold sky on clear days, the way the city sounds different when the temperature drops and the air is less forgiving. Noah and I had been together was the word, the accurate word, the word we were both adjusting to using internally and occasionally externally, for 3 weeks. 3 weeks was not long in the temporal sense. In the accumulated sense, the 5-year accumulated sense, it was the longest 3 weeks either of us had experienced. Not because they were difficult, because they were the first 3 weeks of something that had been building for 5 years, and the building was now no longer under a false description, and the recognition of what had been built was, daily, somewhat staggering. He was different as my boyfriend than as my best friend. No, that is not accurate. He was the same, he was exactly the same person. The same attention, the same Thursday dinners, the same phone calls that went 2 hours, the same quality of presence in a room. I was different. I was looking at him directly for the first time. Not through the friendship filter, not with the management in place. With the full unobstructed vision of someone who had taken their glasses off and discovered that the world was sharper without them. The Thursday dinner in December was the first one where I arrived at his apartment, and we did not perform the specific social choreography of best friendship, the specific practiced ease that is not false but is also not the same as the ease that arrives when you are not managing anything. He opened the door. He looked at me. The look was the look I had been filing for years, direct, warm, the specific quality of someone who is glad you arrived. "Hi," I said. "Come in," he said. I came in. His apartment? The Logan Square apartment that I had been in more times than I could count, and that looked different now in the way that everything looked different now that I was looking directly. He cooked. I sat at his kitchen counter and watched him cook and asked questions about the policy report he had been writing, and he answered with the animation that his work produced in him, and it was the same as every Thursday for 3 years. Except that it was not. You're looking at me differently, he said, without turning from the stove. How, I said. Like you finally took your glasses off, he said. I held my wine glass. That's exactly right, I said. How did you know that? Because that's how I've been looking at you for 3 years, he said, and I recognize it. I looked at him. You've been looking at me without the filter for 3 years, I said. Approximately, he said. Since the second year I mostly looked at you directly, it was just, he paused. What, I said. It was the looking that had no permission to be anything other than friendly looking, he said, so it was direct but it went nowhere. He turned from the stove. Now it goes somewhere. Where, I said. He looked at me. He crossed the kitchen. He stood at the counter beside me. Here, he said. And he kissed me. The first time. In his kitchen on a Thursday in December with the wine and the stove doing its work and the Logan Square apartment around us. Not dramatic, not the culmination of a film's worth of tension resolved in a cinematic single moment. Simple, direct, his. The specific quality of something that was exactly right and had been exactly right in potential for 5 years and was now simply actual. Hi, he said when it was over. You keep saying that, I said. It keeps being the right word, he said. I looked at him. Hi, I said. We told people. Priya, who said finally in the specific tone of someone whose patience had been vindicating itself in real time for 3 years. My friend Marcus from graduate school who said I knew it, and when I said how he said because you describe him like he's a city you love and you describe cities you love like their people, and I had thought about this for a long time. His friend Sophie, who had introduced him to his apartment, who had been watching from a specific angle for years, who cried briefly and said the right thing about time and waiting and the things that are worth it. His parents were different. His parents were the conversation that required the most careful approach. Not because they were hostile, they were not. His mother had known he was gay since he was 22 and had received it with the specific love of a parent who had been paying attention and had simply needed to hear it from him to acknowledge it. His father had needed more time and had arrived at acceptance in the specific nonlinear progress of a parent working through something they had not been prepared for. They knew about me, they had known about me for years as his best friend. His mother had met me at graduation. His father had heard my name in enough context to have a sense of who I was. What was new was the category. He told them on a Sunday, in person, at his parents' house in the Bridgeport neighborhood. He called me after. How was it, I said. My mother said, I wondered when this was going to happen, he said. She knew, I said. Apparently since the 3rd year, he said. She said, you talked about Aaron the way your father talked about me when we were dating. I knew. I held the phone. Your father, I said. He was quiet for a long time, he said, and then he said he's a good person, is he going to treat you well? And you said, I said. I said he already has been for 5 years. I held the phone. No, I said. Yeah. Your father said I was a good person, I said. Based on the available evidence, he said. What evidence, I said. The parking lot Tuesday, he said. When James and I broke up, my mother told him, she said, Aaron drove to Logan Square at 11 at night and sat with him until 2 in the morning. I held this. That was friendship, I said. That was love, he said, the 5-year friendship container version, but love. I held the phone. No, I said. Yeah. I love you, I said, the first time, in December, in the most ordinary moment of a phone call after a Sunday family dinner. He was quiet for a moment. Then I love you too, since approximately the 2nd year. You've said that twice now, I said. I'm going to keep saying it, he said, until the timeline has been fully established. The timeline is established, I said. Good, he said. He showed me the list in January. Not a physical list, he had kept it in the Notes app on his phone. The specific moments, dated, described briefly from 5 years of friendship where the feeling had been too large for the container. I read it with the specific quality of someone reading their own story from the outside. The 3rd Thursday coffee, November, year 1, where I had said something about a reading I had done for the urban planning course and he had thought, I want to talk to this person for the rest of my life. The Sunday in year 2 when I had called him upset about something from my first relationship and he had talked me through it for 2 hours and at the end he had sat with the phone for a long time after we hung up and had typed into the note, "This is the problem. The problem is Aaron." The graduation in year 3 where I had walked across the stage and he had been in the audience and he had not been able to explain to the person beside him why he was clapping the way he was clapping. The parking lot Tuesday in year 4, what he had written, "He drove here, he always comes, that is the thing, he always comes when I need him to come." The thesis defense evening in year 5, what he had written, "He called me first, he always calls me first. There is a reason for that and I am not going to look at the reason because the reason will change everything and I am not ready for everything to change." I read to the end. The last entry, November of year 5, the morning after the sleepover. He had written, "I told him, he told me, the morning is different, everything is the same, everything is more than it was, the friendship is not lost, the friendship is larger, the right size for what it actually is." I held the phone. "No," I said. "Yeah. The morning you wrote was larger," I said. "That's exactly right." "Is it?" he said. "Yes," I said, "it's larger, not different, not replaced. The friendship didn't become something else, it became the full version of what it was." He held this. "The right size," he said. "The right size," I said. March. Chicago in March was the city remembering warmth. Not yet warm, that was April's work. But the remembering, the specific quality of a city that has been through winter and is beginning the slow process of returning to itself. The light different, the air with less of its winter certainty and more of a question. We were at my apartment. The couch, the chair, the established positions. Except that we were on the couch together now. Because the positions had shifted in the way positions shift when the relationship shifts. The couch had room for both of us and we had discovered, over December and January and February, that side by side was the natural configuration when there was nothing requiring a table between us. He was reading. I was working on a project analysis for my firm. I had graduated in December and taken a position at a Chicago urban planning consultancy that did the specific work I had trained for. The apartment, the Saturday afternoon, the specific comfortable quiet of two people sharing a space who had learned each other's rhythms over 5 years before they had learned each other in this configuration. He put his book down. He looked at the ceiling. "Aaron," he said. "Yeah. I want to tell you something," he said. "Tell me," I said. "The sleepover," he said, "the November night." "Yes," I said. "I didn't stay because of the weather advisory," he said. I held my laptop. "What?" I said. "The weather advisory was real," he said. "There was ice on the roads," but he paused. "I had checked the weather before I came over. I knew there would be an advisory." I held my laptop. "You knew you might not be able to drive home," I said. "I knew I would have a reason to stay if I needed one," he said. "Did you need one?" I said. "I thought I might," he said. He stopped. "I had been thinking about saying it for 2 weeks, and I thought if there is a reason to stay the night, if the opportunity presents itself, I might be able to say it." I held this. "The weather advisory gave you cover," I said. "Yes," he said. "To stay," I said. "To stay," he said, "and to say it, if the night produced a moment." I looked at him. "The night produced a moment," I said. "It did," he said. "No," I said. "Yeah. Thank you," I said. "For the plan," he said. "For the courage," I said. "For deciding that you were going to find a way to say it, for the weather advisory strategy." He almost smiled. "It was not a sophisticated strategy," he said. "It worked," I said. "It worked," he agreed. I put my laptop down. I looked at him on the couch. 5 years, the Thursday coffees, the phone calls, the parking lot Tuesday, the thesis defense, the list on his phone, the November night and the morning after and the 3 in the morning and the December kitchen and the River North restaurant and the January list and everything between then and now. "No," I said. "Yeah. I would have gotten there," I said. "Eventually, without the weather advisory, I was getting closer." "I know," he said, "but 5 years was already long enough," I said. "Yes," he said. I crossed the distance on the couch. I sat close. He put his arm around me. The specific weight of it, the warmth, the specific quality of being beside the person who had been the most important person in your life for 5 years and was now the most important person in your life with the right name on it. Aaron, he said. Yeah. I have one more thing on the list, he said. What? I said. This, he said, right now, Saturday in March, you put your laptop down. You're adding to the list in real time, I said. The list doesn't end, he said, it just becomes the life. I held this. The life, I said. Yes, he said. I like that, I said. Good, he said, it's yours. The couch, the March afternoon, the city outside beginning to remember warmth. The friendship that had been the container and was now the life. The right name. The right person. 5 years of getting here. Exactly the right amount of time.